It was a crisp autumn morning in the quiet mountain town of Red Creek. The streets were almost empty except for a few locals heading to work and an elderly man sweeping the front of his diner. At the edge of town, a black SUV rolled to a stop near a small gas station. Out stepped a tall, broad-shouldered man in faded blue jeans, a weathered leather jacket, and dark aviator sunglasses. His long hair was tied loosely at the back, and he carried himself with the calm, heavy presence of someone used to authority. It was Steven Seagal. Unknown to the people of Red Creek, Steven had just been appointed the new chief of police for their department, a decision made quietly by the town council to help reform a force that had earned a reputation for bullying citizens. Wanting to get a sense of the place before his official announcement, Steven arrived unaccompanied, blending in like any traveler passing through. He pushed open the gas station's squeaky glass door and bought a black coffee to start his morning. Outside, he leaned casually against a patrol car parked near the pumps, sipping his drink and surveying the scenic hills beyond the highway. Two officers in uniform exited the station store behind him. Both were young, known in town for their short tempers and habit of throwing their weight around. One of them, Officer Grant, narrowed his eyes at Steven. "Hey!" Grant barked, striding over. "You think you can just lean on a patrol car like you own the place?" Steven turned his head slowly, his sunglasses hiding his eyes, his face unreadable. "Just enjoying my coffee," he said in a low, even tone. Grant wasn't satisfied. "Get off the car now." The second officer, Davis, chuckled and added mockingly, "Looks like we've got ourselves a tough guy." Steven pushed off the car without a word, stepping back calmly. As he did, Grant swatted the coffee cup out of his hand, spilling hot liquid across the pavement. A few customers at the gas pumps turned their heads, sensing something brewing. Steven stood still, his posture relaxed but deliberate, eyes fixed on the officer. The crowd could feel a shift in the air, like a storm waiting to break. The coffee dripped from the patrol car's bumper, spreading across the pavement like a dark stain. Steven didn't flinch. He just watched the liquid pool at his boots, then slowly raised his eyes toward Officer Grant. The calmness in his gaze was almost unnerving, but Grant mistook it for weakness. "What's the matter, old man?" Grant sneered, stepping closer until he was inches from Steven's chest. "You deaf? I told you to stay away from this car." Steven didn't move an inch. His deep voice was steady, almost quiet. "You've made your point. Now step back." The second officer, Davis, snorted and crossed his arms. "Listen to the way he talks, like he's somebody important." He laughed, trying to provoke a reaction, but Steven's face remained expressionless. His posture was relaxed, shoulders slightly forward, like a man at peace with himself. That composure seemed to irritate Grant even more. "You think you're tough, huh? I asked you a question." Grant shoved Steven's shoulder with an open palm, expecting to knock him back a step. Steven barely shifted. His boot stayed planted firmly on the asphalt. A few people at the gas pumps began whispering. One man pulled out his phone and started recording. A mother with her young son quickly guided him toward their car, sensing the situation could spiral. "Sir, there's no need for this," Steven said. His tone was neither fearful nor angry, just calm, the kind of calm that somehow makes tempers flare hotter. "I'm not here to cause trouble." Grant laughed bitterly. "Not here to cause trouble? You're loitering around a patrol car, acting all high and mighty. Show me some ID, right now." Steven reached slowly into his jacket pocket. Davis's hand twitched toward his holster, thinking Steven might be reaching for something else. The tension thickened in the cool morning air. When Steven pulled out his wallet, he flipped it open and held it out. "Here you go." Grant snatched it from his hand, not even looking at it right away. "You better hope this is legit. I don't want to find out you're some drifter with fake papers." Steven didn't respond. He simply stood, his silence carrying an unspoken weight. Meanwhile, the crowd grew. A delivery driver parked his truck nearby and joined the handful of bystanders, forming a loose half-circle, whispering to each other about the confrontation. Grant flipped through the wallet, frowned, and tossed it back carelessly. "Nothing special, figures, you can't just hang around here. This is police property." Steven caught the wallet mid-air, calmly sliding it back into his pocket. "Officer," he said evenly, "the way you're treating me isn't right. I'd appreciate a little respect." That sentence seemed to ignite Grant's temper further. He stepped forward again, chest puffed out. "Respect is earned. You think you deserve it just by standing here with your sunglasses and your quiet voice?" At that moment, the bystanders started murmuring louder. One woman shook her head and said, "He didn't do anything. Why are they harassing him?" Another man muttered, "This is getting out of hand. Someone should call the station." Grant turned on the crowd. "Mind your own business, folks. This is police matter." Steven's expression didn't change, but there was a subtle shift. His jaw tightened ever so slightly. He spoke again in that calm but commanding tone. "You should be careful with your words. You don't know who you're talking to." Davis laughed at the remark, nudging Grant. "Hear that? He's one of those guys who thinks he's special. Maybe he's some retired mall cop." Grant chuckled along, emboldened by his partner's mockery. "Well, pal, in this town, we decide who's special." Just then, a car pulling up to the station slowed as the driver noticed the scene. The man inside rolled down his window, clearly recognizing Steven but saying nothing yet. He simply parked and stepped out, phone in hand to start recording as well. The energy in the air shifted again. The crowd sensed there was more to this stranger than met the eye. Grant, oblivious, leaned in closer to Steven, lowering his voice but not his hostility. "Here's your last warning. Get off this property before I arrest you for trespassing and resisting an officer." Steven's head tilted slightly to the side. "You'd be making a mistake." The words weren't a threat, just a statement of fact. That quiet conviction unsettled a few of the bystanders, who were now openly whispering that they'd seen this man before. Davis folded his arms again. "Look at him, still trying to act calm. I say we haul him in and let the chief sort it out." Grant smirked at the idea. "Yeah, let's see what the boss thinks of you." Steven let out a slow breath, eyes never leaving the officer's face. "You'll find out soon enough." The scene had become a spectacle now. Cars driving past slowed to see what was going on, and several more bystanders pulled out their phones, sensing something about this encounter wasn't as ordinary as it appeared. At that moment, the tension reached a new peak, the kind where even the breeze seems to pause, waiting for the next move. The morning sun climbed higher over Red Creek, casting long shadows across the gas station lot. The breeze that had been stirring the autumn leaves a few minutes earlier now seemed to vanish, as if even nature itself was holding its breath. The bystanders were quiet, too quiet, watching the standoff between the tall, calm stranger and the two officers who clearly thought they were in control. Grant shifted his weight from one foot to the other, his lips curling into a smirk. "You like testing my patience, huh?" he said, jabbing a finger at Steven's chest. "I told you to move along, but you just keep standing there like you own the place." Steven didn't budge. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he replied in a voice that was smooth and steady, the kind of voice that didn't need to be loud to command attention. That calmness gnawed at Grant like sandpaper against his pride. The officer's smirk faltered for a moment, then came back sharper. "You think you're too good to follow simple orders?" From behind the pump, a teenage boy whispered to his friend, "Why doesn't that guy just walk away?" His friend shook his head. "I don't know, but he doesn't look scared. He looks like, I don't know, like he's in control or something." Grant took another step forward, closing the distance between them until his boots almost touched Steven's. "I don't like your attitude. Hands where I can see them." Steven slowly raised his hands to chest height, palms open. His movements were deliberate, unhurried, almost graceful. "There's no need for this," he said. Davis, leaning against the patrol car with his arms folded, chuckled darkly. "Yeah, listen to him, no need for this. You're the one standing here like a statue. Grant, just cuff him already. I'm tired of his smart mouth." That suggestion seemed to light a spark in Grant's eyes. He reached for his cuffs. "Good idea." The crowd reacted with a soft ripple of alarm, whispers, a gasp from the woman standing near the door of the convenience store. "Is he under arrest?" someone asked. "Not yet," another voice answered, "but it looks like it's heading that way." Steven stayed rooted, his eyes fixed on Grant. He didn't resist, but there was a quiet warning in his tone when he spoke. "You're about to cross a line you'll regret." Grant barked a laugh, trying to hide the flicker of uncertainty he felt at those words. "Oh yeah, and why's that?" "Because," Steven said, his voice dropping just a shade lower, "you don't know who you're dealing with." The words hung in the cool morning air, heavy and electric. Grant reached for Steven's arm to spin him around for the cuffs, but before he could, Steven shifted his stance just slightly, almost imperceptibly, but enough that Grant hesitated. It wasn't resistance, it was presence. Something about the way the man moved made it clear he wasn't some helpless passerby. Davis noticed the hesitation and scoffed. What's the holdup, Grant? Scared of the old guy? Grant gritted his teeth. Not a chance. With that, he grabbed Steven's arm, gripping harder than necessary. From the crowd, the teenage boy whispered again, I swear I've seen that guy somewhere before. Movies, maybe? Maybe, the friend replied. He moves like a fighter. The tension escalated further when Grant gave Steven a rough shove toward the hood of the patrol car. Steven's palms touched the metal, but instead of resisting or stumbling, he turned his head slowly to look over his shoulder at Grant. That was your second mistake, he said quietly. Grant snorted. Oh, please. What's the first one? Spilling your coffee? No, Steven replied, his gaze steady. The first mistake was assuming I'd let you treat me like that. The exchange sent a visible shiver through the onlookers. They couldn't quite explain it, but something in the way Steven spoke, in his posture and his control, made them believe every word. A delivery driver, still recording, muttered under his breath, This is about to get real. Davis, trying to play the tough guy, circled around to Steven's other side. Grant, I think he's bluffing. Let's see what he's hiding. Grant grabbed for Steven's other arm, but this time Steven stepped forward just enough to free himself without any sudden or aggressive motion. It was smooth, effortless, and somehow more intimidating than a shove would have been. Last warning, Steven said. Step back. Grant's face reddened. He hated feeling challenged, especially in front of a crowd that was now openly filming and murmuring their disapproval. That's it, he shouted, reaching for his baton. The crowd collectively gasped, some even stepping backward. At that very moment, a man in a suit stepped out of a parked car near the edge of the lot. He stopped mid-stride, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. The look on his face said he recognized Steven immediately, though he didn't speak yet. Steven noticed him out of the corner of his eye but kept his attention on the two officers. The tension had reached its boiling point. The baton half drawn, the crowd holding its breath, the stranger in the suit watching with recognition dawning in his eyes. The next few seconds would decide everything, whether this would end in violence or in revelation. For a moment, the entire gas station parking lot went silent. The baton in Officer Grant's grip hovered in the air, trembling slightly as if even he wasn't sure about his next move. Steven stood as still as a stone, broad shoulders squared, his calm eyes hidden behind the dark lenses of his aviator sunglasses. Then came the first whisper. From near the convenience store door, a teenage boy nudged his friend. Dude, I swear I know that guy, he muttered, keeping his voice low but unable to take his eyes off the stranger standing in front of the two cops. His friend squinted. Know him how? The boy shrugged, nervous. I think I saw him in a movie once. My dad's into those old school action flicks. Doesn't he look like that martial arts actor? The one who never loses a fight? The friend's brows furrowed as he tilted his head. You mean Steven Seagal? The boy nodded slowly. Yeah, that's the one. It can't be him though, right? What would a movie star be doing here? Their quiet exchange didn't stay quiet for long. A woman in her 30s holding her phone out to record overheard them and frowned as she studied Steven's profile. Her eyes widened. Oh my gosh, she whispered to herself. I think they're right. Word began to spread like a ripple through the small crowd. People started murmuring, leaning toward one another with growing curiosity. Is it really him? No way, what would he be doing in Red Creek? Look at the way he's standing. It is him. Meanwhile, Grant and Davis remained oblivious, still locked in their standoff with Steven. Hands on the hood, Grant barked again, though his voice wavered just slightly now, betraying his frustration at Steven's refusal to react with fear. Steven didn't budge. Instead, he replied in that low, even tone that had unsettled the officers since the beginning. You've done enough. Put the baton away. That single sentence sent a fresh wave of whispers through the crowd. He talks just like in the movies, one bystander whispered. That voice. Oh man, it really is him. Another replied. Near the edge of the lot, the man in the suit, who had stepped out of the parked sedan moments earlier, was now walking closer, his eyes fixed on Steven. There was recognition written all over his face, and unlike the others, his expression was one of relief rather than surprise. Grant noticed the murmurs and shot an annoyed glance at the onlookers. Everybody back off, he snapped. This is official police business. A woman near the pumps folded her arms defiantly. Looks more like harassment to me, she said loud enough for everyone to hear. Grant's head whipped around, his face flushing red. "Ma'am, stay out of this Before you what?" She interrupted, not backing down. "He hasn't done anything wrong. We can all see that." The crowd's mood shifted. They were no longer just curious spectators. They were starting to question the officer's behavior openly. Davis stepped in to back his partner. "We don't owe you people an explanation," he barked. "We're handling a potential suspect here." That drew a scoff from a delivery driver leaning on his truck. "A suspect for what? Drinking coffee in front of a patrol car?" The sarcastic remark earned a few chuckles from the crowd, but the officers didn't find it funny. Grant tightened his grip on the baton. "Last warning," he hissed at Steven. "Do as I say or you'll regret it." Steven's head turned slightly toward the gathering crowd. His calm voice carried enough weight for everyone to hear. "No one deserves to be treated like this without cause. Not in front of their families, not in front of their neighbors, not anywhere." The murmurs grew louder. People nodded in agreement. The man in the suit finally stepped forward, raising a hand. "Officers," he called out firmly, "you need to stop this right now." Grant spun toward him, irritated. "Sir, step back." "This isn't your concern." "Oh, I think it is," the man replied with a faint smile. "Especially since you're about to embarrass yourselves in front of the entire department." Grant frowned, confused. "What are you talking about?" The man gestured toward Steven. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Grant snorted. "Some guy who thinks he's above the law, apparently." The crowd gasped softly as the tension inched up another notch. The whispers now were louder, more insistent. "That is him. It's Steven Seagal. I told you." "Are these cops really that clueless?" Steven remained silent, almost stoic, as though he had no interest in defending himself. Instead, he shifted his weight slightly, a subtle move that conveyed complete self-control. Grant, annoyed by the whispers he couldn't quite make out, turned back to Steven. "I don't care who you think you are. Out here I give the orders." Steven's voice was calm but firm as he responded, "And sometimes giving orders doesn't mean you're right." The crowd's reaction to that line was immediate. Murmurs of agreement and even a few scattered claps. Grant's jaw tightened. "You're testing my patience." "Davis, get the cuffs," but Davis hesitated this time. His eyes darted toward the man in the suit, then back to Steven, then to the murmuring crowd. Something in the atmosphere was shifting, and he felt it. "Grant," Davis said quietly, "maybe we should wait a second." "Wait for what?" Grant snapped. The man in the suit finally stepped closer, his voice dropping but still carrying authority. "You're about to arrest your new boss." The sentence landed like a thunderclap. Gasps erupted from the crowd. Phones tilted forward to capture every reaction. Davis's eyes widened, his posture stiffening as he processed what he'd just heard. Grant blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "What did you say?" The man smiled faintly. "I said, you're about to arrest the new chief of police." The whispers in the crowd turned into a buzz of astonished chatter. People exchanged wide-eyed looks, realizing the truth behind the calm stranger's presence. Steven remained quiet, watching the officers with that same steady gaze. He hadn't said a word to confirm or deny it. Yet, the revelation was out now, hanging in the crisp air, and the next move belonged to the two officers who suddenly found themselves standing on very thin ice. The gas station lot felt frozen in time. The murmurs of the crowd still buzzed in the background, but Grant's ears rang with the stranger's words. "You're about to arrest your new boss." Grant blinked twice, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling crawling up his spine. His baton wavered in his grip. "New boss? That's some kind of joke, right?" he asked, though his voice lacked the confidence it had moments ago. The man in the suit, Deputy Mayor Collins, folded his arms, his expression calm but cutting. "It's no joke, officer. I was on my way to the station to meet your new chief. Imagine my surprise finding him being manhandled in a parking lot by his own men." The revelation landed like a sledgehammer on the two officers. Davis shifted his weight, his shoulders stiffening as the pieces began to click into place. His eyes darted back to Steven, searching for confirmation. Steven still hadn't moved. He stood tall, composed as ever, a faint breeze lifting the edge of his leather jacket. Then, without a word, he slipped a hand into his jacket and pulled out a black leather badge holder. With a flick of his wrist, it opened, revealing the gleaming silver badge of the Red Creek Police Department's new chief of police. The crowd gasped audibly. Phones zoomed in, recording every detail. Grant's smirk vanished entirely. Steven's deep voice broke the silence, steady and commanding yet never raised. "Officer Grant, Officer Davis, you wear that badge to protect the people of this town, not to intimidate them. Respect isn't a privilege you hand out to the people you like. It's the foundation of your duty." Grant's face flushed a deep red. "Chief, he stammered, but Steven raised a hand slightly, silencing him. "You slapped a stranger. You shoved him. You humiliated him in front of the people you swore to serve," Steven continued, his tone even, almost measured, like a teacher laying out a lesson. "That stranger turned out to be your superior officer, but that's not the point. The real problem is that you treated any man that way." The crowd grew quiet, hanging on every word. Even the distant hum of traffic seemed to fade beneath Steven's calm reprimand. Davis lowered his gaze, shame creeping across his face. Grant, however, shifted uncomfortably, still trying to salvage some dignity. "Chief Seagal," he started, his voice rough with regret. We didn't know. You thought wrong." Steven interrupted sharply, his words like the snap of a whip. "You saw a man you didn't recognize and you decided he didn't deserve respect. That ends today." The delivery driver near his truck nodded approvingly, muttering to the person beside him, "That's the kind of leader we need." Steven turned slightly toward the crowd as if speaking to everyone now. "This badge," he said, lifting his own for all to see, "means we uphold the law without bias. We're not here to look down on people. We're here to protect them, whether they're wearing a suit, a uniform, or old jeans and a leather jacket like me." There was a pause. Then a ripple of applause began at the edge of the crowd, hesitant at first, but quickly growing stronger. Steven looked back at the two officers. "You have a chance to learn from this," he said, his voice softening just a fraction. "Being an officer isn't about being the toughest guy in the room. It's about being the calmest, the fairest, the one who stands between harm and the people who can't protect themselves." Grant swallowed hard, the weight of Steven's words sinking in. He slowly lowered the baton to his side, his posture no longer aggressive. "Chief, I'm sorry," he said quietly. Steven didn't nod, didn't smile. He simply held Grant's gaze for a long, silent moment before answering. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to them." He gestured to the crowd. Grant turned toward the onlookers, his voice low but audible. "I'm sorry for how I acted. That was wrong." A few bystanders murmured their approval. Others simply nodded. Steven faced the officers again, his expression neutral but his tone softer now. "You'll both report to my office after your shift. We'll discuss training, mandatory training, on how to handle situations without turning them into confrontations. I expect better from both of you." Davis nodded quickly. "Yes, Chief." Grant echoed him, quieter. "Understood." Steven stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough for only the two officers to hear. "You're lucky today didn't go differently. Remember that." Both men nodded, visibly humbled. Straightening up, Steven addressed the crowd one last time. "Go about your day, folks. Thank you for standing by and keeping this peaceful. We all have a role in keeping this town safe, and that includes holding each other accountable." A burst of applause followed his words, louder this time, as phones captured his calm authority. Some in the crowd even cheered, impressed by how he'd handled the situation without raising his voice or losing his composure. As Steven walked past the two officers toward the deputy mayor's car, the man in the suit offered a small smile. "Quite the first day on the job, Chief." Steven's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "Let's just hope the rest of the week is quieter." The tension that had once gripped the parking lot now felt lifted, replaced by a hum of conversation and a renewed sense of respect for the man who had stood tall without needing to throw a single punch. The autumn sun had begun to dip behind the tall pines that lined the highway, casting long, amber streaks across the gas station lot. The scene that had started as an ordinary morning scuffle had turned into something else entirely, a quiet lesson in dignity and authority. But for Grant and Davis, the weight of humiliation was only beginning to settle. They stood rigid by their patrol car, their uniforms still neat but their confidence stripped away. The crowd lingered in clusters, whispering, their phones still recording as if they sensed the story wasn't quite over. Steven Seagal, the newly revealed police chief, remained calm and unshaken. He stood near the deputy mayor's car, speaking quietly with Collins while keeping a watchful eye on the two officers. His presence alone felt heavier than any shouted order. Collins broke the silence first. "Steven, I'll be honest with you. I'd heard about discipline issues with these two, but I didn't realize it had gotten this bad. You handled that better than anyone else could have. The town council made the right choice bringing you in." Steven gave a slow nod. "We can't fix the culture of a department overnight," he said in his low, deliberate tone. "But we can start by holding the right people accountable." A soft murmur swept through the bystanders. A woman in a denim jacket who'd recorded the entire encounter stepped forward hesitantly. "Excuse me, Chief. Are you really going to do something about officers like them?" she asked, gesturing toward Grant and Davis. Steven turned to her with that same calm composure. "Ma'am, everyone deserves a chance to do better, if they're willing to learn. But respect is not optional for anyone wearing this badge. Today was their warning. From now on, there will be consequences." The woman smiled faintly, reassured, and stepped back into the crowd. Grant shifted uneasily, glancing at Davis. "Chief," he finally said, clearing his throat. I know I messed up. I don't want people thinking all we do is abuse our authority. I can do better." Davis nodded quickly. "Me too. I shouldn't have gone along with it." Steven walked toward them, his boots crunching lightly on the gravel. When he stopped a few feet away, the silence was so profound that even the distant hum of the highway seemed muted. "Grant. Davis," he began, his voice steady but carrying across the entire lot. "Today you got lucky. You confronted a man who could stand up for himself and chose not to press charges. If it had been someone else, an ordinary citizen without a voice or an audience, this could have gone a very different way. You'd be looking at lawsuits, or worse." The officers lowered their eyes. Steven continued, "I don't expect perfection, but I expect discipline. I expect respect. You want to be trusted by the people you serve? Start by treating them like people, not suspects." A man in the crowd, an older mechanic named Earl, called out, "About time someone said that." A ripple of agreement followed, and the applause began again, louder this time. Grant's shoulders slumped. "Chief, I'm sorry. I'll take whatever punishment you see fit." Steven nodded slightly, the faintest acknowledgement of the apology. "You'll be reassigned to community service for the next 2 weeks," he said. "You'll work alongside the very people you've been sworn to protect. You'll look them in the eye and see them as neighbors, not just names on reports." Grant nodded silently, humbled. Turning to Davis, Steven added, "You'll join him, and both of you will attend a mandatory workshop on de-escalation tactics. You need to understand that your badge is a responsibility, not a weapon." The decision drew murmurs of approval from the crowd. A teenager near the back whispered to his friend, "Man, that's better than just firing them. Makes them earn the respect back." Steven glanced at the onlookers. "Justice isn't just about punishment," he said, addressing everyone. "It's about making things right and giving people a chance to do better. But those chances aren't endless. Next time it won't be a lesson, it'll be a termination." The crowd cheered, some even clapping him on the shoulder as he passed. Grant's voice cracked slightly as he said, "Thank you for not throwing us off the force. Chief, we'll do better." Steven studied both men for a moment, his face unreadable, then replied simply, "We'll see." As the crowd began to disperse, a local news van pulled up, tipped off by the flurry of social media posts already circulating. A reporter hopped out, mic in hand, eager to capture what had unfolded. "Chief Seagal," she called. "Word is spreading fast about what happened here. Any statement for the public?" Steven faced the camera briefly, his voice low but clear. "No one's above the law. Not even the people who enforce it. Today's not about headlines, it's about doing what's right." The reporter smiled, clearly impressed by the soundbite, and turned to interview some of the bystanders. Meanwhile, Collins leaned toward Steven with a half smile. "Looks like your first day's going viral already." Steven chuckled softly, barely audible. "I didn't take this job for the fame," he said. "But if the story helps rebuild trust between the police and the people, then maybe it's worth it." Grant and Davis remained near their patrol car, quieter than they'd been all day. They exchanged a look, one of silent understanding that this incident had changed how they'd approach their jobs from now on. As the last of the crowd trickled away, the gas station lot fell into a calm evening hush. The incident that began as an abuse of power had transformed into a turning point for the entire department. For Steven, it was just the start of a long road ahead. By the next morning, the quiet town of Red Creek was anything but quiet. Overnight, the cell phone videos taken at the gas station had spread like wildfire across social media. Hashtags like Turn Chief Seagal, Respect the Badge, and Justice in Red Creek were trending nationwide. Clips of the confrontation, Grant slapping Steven's coffee to the ground, the dramatic reveal of Steven's badge and his calm yet powerful speech, were replayed again and again on news channels. Commentators praised Steven for keeping his composure under pressure, while others lauded the way he turned a potentially explosive incident into a teachable moment for the entire department. For Grant and Davis, the spotlight was far less flattering. Their faces were plastered all over the internet as examples of poor policing, and their inboxes were flooded with criticism. Both men stayed mostly off social media, ashamed but also determined to prove they could change. At the station, Steven arrived early, his presence already setting a new tone. The atmosphere among the officers was noticeably different, quieter, more serious. A few of the senior officers who'd been skeptical of the town council's choice for chief now regarded him with something like respect. Grant and Davis reported to his office on time, looking far less cocky than they had the day before. Grant was the first to speak. "Chief," he began, his voice low and sincere, "I know I embarrassed myself, the department, and the town. I deserve whatever's coming." Steven leaned back in his chair, hands folded. "You embarrassed the badge," he said evenly. "But yesterday you also took responsibility. That's a start." He outlined their reassignment: community service, public apologies, and mandatory de-escalation workshops. Grant and Davis nodded, fully aware they were being given a chance most chiefs wouldn't have offered. Meanwhile, in the town's diner, locals watched the news on a mounted TV. The elderly owner, who'd seen the incident unfold live the day before, said with a chuckle, "Never thought I'd see the day when a Hollywood star schools our own cops on respect." Outside, a group of teenagers held up their phones, showing each other clips of Steven's speech. "This is the kind of cop I'd want in my town," one of them said as others nodded in agreement. Later that day, the deputy mayor held a brief press conference outside the station. Flanked by Steven on one side and a few senior officers on the other, he addressed the crowd of reporters. "We want to reassure the people of Red Creek that the department is committed to rebuilding trust," Collins announced. "Yesterday's incident, while unfortunate, has highlighted the importance of accountability within our force. Chief Seagal's leadership has already made a difference." When Steven stepped up to the podium, cameras flashed in rapid bursts. His words were simple but firm. "Uniforms don't make us better than anyone else. They make us responsible for everyone else. My promise to this town is that we will serve with fairness, humility, and respect for all people, no exceptions." The statement struck a chord, sparking another wave of applause from the small crowd gathered outside the station. Reporters asked about Grant and Davis's future. Steven didn't dodge the question. "They're staying on for now. I believe in second chances, but not third. They'll have to earn back the trust they've lost." As the press conference wrapped up, the videos continued to rack up millions of views online. Across the country, people shared the story as an example of how leadership and respect could diffuse even the most tense situations. By evening, Steven sat alone in his new office, the sun casting warm stripes across his desk. A faint knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Davis carrying a stack of paperwork. "Chief," Davis said awkwardly, "just wanted to say, I'm glad you're in charge. Yesterday opened my eyes. I'll do better." Steven studied the younger officer for a moment, then gave a slight nod. "Good. Prove it every day you wear that badge." As Davis left, Steven glanced at the framed photo of the town's police department hanging on the wall. The men and women in it looked back at him solemnly, as if acknowledging the weight of the work ahead. Outside, the town of Red Creek carried on, but there was a new energy in the air, a sense that things were changing for the better. The incident that began with an unnecessary slap had transformed into something far larger, a reminder that authority is earned, not demanded, and that dignity can disarm even the most heated conflicts.